All right. Thank you for being here for this February installment of the Focus On program. It's Focus On Topeka High School. We're so thankful to be joined by Tonya Foster. As I mentioned in the invite, she was awarded the 2024 Kansas Association of School Librarians President's Distinguished Library Media Specialist Award. That is a mouthful. Tonya, thank you for being here on this, what we said, snowy day. If you're watching the recording, a lot of us are home today because of hopefully the last snow of the season. Knocking on wood on that. I don't want to jinx us. So let's get started with our 30 minutes together. Would you please introduce yourself and your library? Just how long you've been in this particular position? What can we know about you?
Well, thank you for having me. I'm Tonya Foster. I am currently one of the librarians at Topeka High School. There are two of us um, because we're such a big school in Topeka, Kansas. And this is my 11th year as a librarian. The 7 years before, I was an elementary school librarian, and I really loved it. Um, but I mentioned before to you, Dan, that I actually went to Topeka High School. So when I'm an alum, so when I saw that there was an opening, I was like, who wouldn't want to go every day and sit in that library? And if you don't know anything about Topeka High, we were the first $1 million high school built west of the Mississippi, and we're a works project administration. Um, project. And so we're actually a National Historic Site. So we have a historic site person in our building. And but I'm in that library. It's a two-story library, all wood, original wood tables and chairs and shelving and two-story stained glass windows. It has a fireplace. And I was like, yeah, that might be a good place to work. And so I put my application in and they hired me, and I went from kindergartners who, oh my God, bless their little souls. Like they come in and I feel like I'm a cheerleader for 30 minutes. And so I went from them to, big kids. And but I like it. I like the jump. So but this is my 27th year in education, all in Topeka Public Schools. And but the Topeka High Library is just a lovely place to be. And if you haven't ever seen it, the KASL district workshop is going to be there this spring on March 29th. So if you would like to register and come and participate in a day um of professional development hosted by other librarians in the Northeast District, you'll get a tour of the school. So
Well, that's a great invite. Thank you for that. And we'll try to, when I send out the video, I'll try to make sure I come up with the link because I know we had a lot of school librarians sign up for this month's installment. And it's great to be able to, you're my second school librarian for the program. So we had the librarian from Leavenworth High School last year. So I'm really trying to branch out to beyond just public. So we started talking about these kids on their way to adulthood who make up your community. What can you tell us about your school community?
well, we are the largest high school in Topeka. We usually have between 1,500 and 1,600 students. And we have a vast, we have everything. And we're also a dual language school. So we have students that receive instruction in English and in Spanish in both literacy and math. Um, and we're at an EL school, so English language learners school. Um, and so you know, we have everything. We have kids that it's very common for kids to come in to our library that need help, and we're using Google Translate for um, many languages, not just Spanish. Like we have kids from the Ukraine and from Japan and China. So we have a very diverse population. Um, it's a lovely place to be.
That's great. Can you tell us a little bit about how the operations are at your school library? I know you mentioned working with another school librarian. How does it work at your school?
Um, we, that's something that we're always working on. Like we're always trying to figure out how we can best serve students. One of the things about the Topeka Public Schools libraries that not everybody knows is that the librarians there are heavily involved in the technology. So if we were to let ourselves, that technology focus could be the only focus that we had because it's constant. Like I'll have people who come in and do um like a practicum at Topeka High, and they need to get their hours and they need to observe. And I'll tell them, okay, you can come in and you'll see this day, but you'll also see us dealing with technology. And unfailingly, um, midway through, they'll come up and they'll be like, I had no idea how much technology you were talking about. So that can really like take up our time. But that isn't what the only purpose of a library. And when I was transitioning from elementary school to high school, where in elementary school I had a very definite focus. Like my kids, they were learning to use the library. I was teaching them how to browse for books, but I was also teaching them about authors and series, and I was really known for connecting students with authors. So we would have author visits, be they virtual or in person, and among other things. But when I go to high school, I'm like, okay, what is going to be my niche? What am I going how am I going to make myself useful there? And I think the thing that I found there is those big kids are still little kids who, they're in these giant bodies and they have all these responsibilities, but they also need outlets and they need things to do. And so right away, I got involved with we in our library, we always have some sort of monthly event, and students are invited to come either on their own in their Trojan time, which is what we call like an advisor base, a seminar time. Um, or sometimes, depending on the event, also they could just be invited with a regular classroom teacher, whether that's, language arts, math, um, art, social studies. But we always have some sort of event that we put on. And so um they come down, the teacher comes with them. We have everything they need to complete those events, and then we let them just create. And it's been absolutely amazing because some of the kids that come in, you know, many times, and everybody hears this, like kids spend so much time on their phones and they're not interacting with each other. But when they come in, they sit down at the table and they start talking to each other. And if they have their phones out, a lot of times it's because maybe they're like looking at an idea that they want to, I want to emulate this. And they come in and they try these things. Like we've done cookie decorating and gingerbread house, haunted house decorating. And we've done Franken toys where they break apart toys and make them into other things. And we put out the sewing machines. And and then we always have an event every year where there's something at every table and they just get to go around and do whatever they want to do. And I'll walk around and I'll see the things that they're creating, and I'm just like, "Have you ever done this before?" And they're like, "No." "Have you ever decorated a cookie before?" "No," but their cookie, when you look at it, is like a little masterpiece, And I'm like, "I can't do that. I can't do what you just did." And it's just activating their brains in a different way, and it's giving them like that outlet to kind of get rid of some stress and just be creative. And that is, I think, one of the important things about the Topeka High Library. Now, of course, like, this week I'm supposed to, we'll see what happens. But this week I am going to be going out and teaching 11th graders about resources through our district and through the state of Kansas for research. We have a partnership. Our school district has a partnership with the Topeka and Shawnee County Public Library. And we're always talking to them about the digital books, the as well as physical copies, but digital resources that are available there. And we're actively encouraging Beanstack. So, you know, this is a really long answer, but we do technology and we do these monthly events. And then we're also like trying to push books and have kids come in. Our checkout percentages have increased every year. And so we're really excited about that as well. So,
That's great. I wonder, do you have then students that you had at the elementary level who are now at your high school? That's got to be pretty neat.
oh yeah, many, many, many of them are kids that I had. Now, we have like 18 elementary schools.
Hmm,
Um, And I would say maybe 6 or 7, probably more, feed into our school. But yeah, the one that I was at before directly feeds into Topeka High.
very neat.
So they'll come in. I'm like, hey, and they look at me and they're like, what are you doing here, Miss Foster? And so
Yeah. So you found your niche, obviously. You, and I worked for Lawrence School District as the technology liaison to the school librarians. So, and that's exactly how it was in the Lawrence School District too, is the school librarian was the tech point person for everybody in the building. So that's a lot to deal with on top of all of your other work.
yeah.
So we talked a little bit about this historic space, but can you maybe give us a little bit more breakdown about what we would see if we could join you for um, this meeting later in March? What are the different parts or nooks? You mentioned old furnishings, tables, so we're kind of getting an image. 2 stories, high ceilings.
So a lot of my friends call the Topeka High Library like the Harry Potter library. You know how in the movie you had all those wooden shelves and um, our doors are arched doors, and we have these 4 little rooms off the side of the library, and it's all the original doors and woodworking, which is just intricate. And the best thing is when I went there and they gave me the keys, like to get into my library and to get into the doors, it's a skeleton key. So, you can't just like, you can't lose them because if you lose them, you can't just make another copy of these skeleton keys. And we have like I said, we have this fireplace now. It hasn't been used since the 90s. Um, but what we like to do is we have put like a TV in front of the fireplace before. Or the other thing we did this year was we put a projector down low and projected the YouTube fire videos into the fireplace, and people will walk by or the kids will walk in and they're like, "You have a fire?" And we're like, no, it just looks like it.
It's magic.
Um, but yeah, we've been working hard. We have all the original tables and chairs, and they've all been refinished. When I came, a bunch of them had like a protective, um, like it slid over the top of the
Like acrylic.
original tables, and those have been taken off and have been refinished. And we do spend a lot of time talking to kids about, please use a coaster. These are antique tables. Um, you can't eat in here, those sorts of things. Uh, but for the most part, the kids are pretty respectful of that. They realize that it's an old building and that it is unusual and it's beautiful. And I really kind of think that it's not until you're a little bit older and you're aware, and then you come back and you see it, that you're like, oh wow, like I was there every day, you know, that sort of thing. But you walk in and we have a bunch of the original chandeliers, and we do have a like a balcony over our area that's not for us to use anymore. It's part of our historical society, but the students always really want to go up there. It's so every once in a while, if they're being, okay, and then we have a little extra time, I might take them up there and let them see the bird's eye view of the
Yeah,
school,
that
of the
sounds really neat.
library. So it's it's a gorgeous place.
Yeah. Um, so I know there's probably, since you do a different program every month, we probably couldn't get into them all, but could you tell us a little bit about the programs or the services that you provide your students that you're proud of or that you think our group here might be interested in?
So every year it's something different, you know. We have a different focus. And last year, the other librarian and I, we wrote a grant, and we kind of planned out like we would like to do this and this, and kind of we planned out ahead of time and wrote a grant for some of the supplies that we would need. And then we did that, um and we received the grant, and we were able to fund and purchase, a lot of things that we wouldn't have been able to on our own. And I mean, like some of the things that the students love, like we we bought shrinky dink, the shrinky dink paper, and that was out one in January last year. It was mini art. And we had like three different things that they could do that was mini, but the shrinky dinks were one of them. And the kids just went crazy with those. And what was really cool is we had like a French teacher. They were studying the Impressionists at that time. And so she signed up her class, and they came down and they made mini French Impressionists drawings, and then shrunk them. And because of our partnership with the Topeka and Shawnee County Public Library, we have a bunch of keychains that say TSCPL at school. Um, and so they were able to make little keychains and walk away with keychains. And um but they just, this year, so last summer, the other librarian and I, we have been friends for a long time, and we do a lot of travel together to literacy conferences and other like nerd camps and AASL, but this last year we went to Steam in the Park in Acadia National Park. And that really kind of inspired us to like look at nature around us, here in Kansas. And so a lot of our themes have been either about nature. This year have been about nature, or like national parks. And so like at the beginning of the year, we did a giant mural, and this all the students, a bunch of students came in, not all of them, of course. A bunch of students came in and they painted sunflowers. And at the same time, so our school has something we call the morning report, which is a student-led news report. We were putting information on there about, you know, sunflowers growth, and where students could go see sunflowers, because at the time Gritner Farms had sunflowers blooming. And just, we had things about artists like Van Gogh, and that are famous for their sunflowers. And they came in, they painted them, and then we took all of those and we cut them out, and we made a giant mural of a vase of sunflowers, much like a Van Gogh painting. So that this year our theme has been more nature, the park sort of activities.
That's pretty neat that you kind of come up with that overall theme. I'm sure that kind of helps give you new ideas to try, but also kind of like a pathway for your year.
Yeah.
What
Yeah.
what did you focus on in the prior years?
Um, you know, so we did the year before, I mentioned we're a dual language school. So the year before, our big kind of school-wide mural, excuse me, was a celebration of Day of the Dead. So um the students came in and we had a simple lesson for people like me that are not very artistic. Like, you could do this. We have the directions out how you could make one using symmetry, and they painted it, and then they told us on the back like what color they wanted it to be. And we have proctors, and the proctors helped us paint those using shaving cream, which they thought was great fun. And I'm like, you guys really are just big kids. And and then we took all of those murals and we made one giant uh display outside of our library. And if you know anything about Topeka High is an entire city block long. And the mural ended up being about half the size of Topeka High. It's like our wing. So we were a little less than half a city block long mural that we had. So
Wow,
we did that in celebration of, our Hispanic culture, our Latino culture. We did celebrations that actually we got some of the ideas from the public library. Uh for like corn husk dolls and weaving um for National Native American Month. We did things for African American history. So last year it was kind of more about like celebrations of um those maybe less represented cultures in our history.
neat. That's a pretty good segue. We've mentioned the Topeka and Shawnee County Public Library a couple times, well, and that makes sense. They're not terribly far
Yeah.
from you, and I
They're-
see some people from TSCPL here with us today. So, can you tell us any more about that partnership? You talked a little bit about ebooks and some of the other kind of crossovers. How about what other things you do with them, or maybe other partners, and why are those important to your work?
Um, So the big one, and now I'll tell you that I forgot to mention this in my introduction. So I've been 11 years in school libraries, but for 3.5 of those years, I also worked at the public library. That was my second job. And so I was in the children's department, and it was a great experience. And I am a huge user of audiobooks. And I have read ebooks and things, but I tend to be like, I usually either want the physical copy or I'm going to listen to it. And and we have so many students at every level who maybe weren't as fortunate enough to have somebody in their life who was able to sit down with them and read them book after book after book. And or maybe also they have reading challenges, and so actually physically reading the book is difficult for them. And but that doesn't stop that need for a story. And that doesn't stop that need for literacy. And so I think one of the biggest things that we can do is provide them that opportunity to, hey, I know that right now you're not able to access this, that your other peers are accessing it, but here's a way you can. And so when I was in elementary and we first developed that partnership, like, student classes would come down and I would help them get logged in, and we would set up their Hoopla accounts, and we would find, the books that they could read. And during COVID, I like, if a teacher told me that um they wanted their students to have access to, the library resources, I said, during COVID and made class after class after class, did their logins, created their accounts, and, got that information out to them. And, so just accessing those electronic copies, e-resources are so important. But then I also, high school, one of the things I can say, they're assigned to read a book and there's not enough physical copies, and they come to us and we, our copy is gone. And so we're like, well, we can go see if the library has it. And they're like, well, I don't have a library card. And I'm like, well, actually you do. And so I, myself and the other librarian, Julia Oswald, who I think is on here now, have gone and picked up books for kids and dropped off books for kids. And so it's lovely that they're able to access both the e-resources and the physical resources. And then, just in our day-to-day um, interactions with students, we're always talking to them about, okay, you have these research resources through our district, but then in addition, you have these through the public library. And then even in addition to that, you have these through the state of Kansas, their library. And so we're always using those. Um, I think that we always also try to be very aware of other things around us, that we can be a part of or contribute to. We have our Topeka Schools Foundation. They're a great resource. They were the ones that funded our grant last year. Um, and then just the Topeka community. I'm like, if I say, I want to do this with my students, does anybody have, any extra coloring books that you're not using? And all of my friends start like, hey, I have these, and can I drop them off? Can you come pick them up? And so I think we're just constantly looking and willing to work with lots of people.
That's great. A lot of community vibes there. So I say this every month. The time always goes by so fast. So it's our kind of our final question. I'd love to hear your take on professional organizations, especially KSL. KASL. Yeah, I said it all right. So what can you just tell us about what you get out of memberships? Why do people need to sign up if they're not? Uh, Dish on it for us.
I was involved pretty early in my career with KASL. The people that I worked with were involved, and so they were encouraging me to get involved. I was the recipient of um, the first time attendee to AASL scholarship. And so the very first American Association of School Librarians conference that I went to was because of KASL. And I've gone every year since then, um, because I feel, it's that powerful. I was the assistant director and the director of the Northeast regional workshop. Um, so, I did a couple years of service there, and I'm pretty proud of the fact that in the couple years that I um worked on it, I was able to get authors to come and speak each time. A lot of times Kansas City authors that maybe other librarians weren't as familiar with, and those authors have received quite a bit of connections through our workshop in the area that I know that they have appreciated. And I also know that a lot of time that has continued since since my term. I was also the president-elect and the president of KASL. Now, I will add the caveat that the year I was president was the year of COVID, and so I wasn't even doing library. I was teaching second and fourth grade online. So I feel like I did, it wasn't my best year ever. And then,
It wasn't
and
anybody's best year, probably. It's safe to say.
yeah. Eh, and then of course, I have been past president and I still stay connected with many of the leadership people and we're always brainstorming. Like I think last year, so Rachel Yoder was one of the leadership people. And last year we came up with a big push to really get elementary, or excuse me, school librarians, not just elementary, school librarians to really put themselves out there and say, you know, I can offer this at the KLA conference. Because in sometimes in the past we've gone and yes, there are good sessions, but they're not always school librarian sessions, which really helps us. And so we started really rounding up people and saying, you know, you do a lot. Can you, we really recruited people and, we had a bigger audience this year of school librarians in attendance, I believe. And I think that like every session there was a school library option, which I know a lot of people really appreciated. So I I'm not an officer right now, but I do still really try to stay connected and I'm always encouraging people in our district and anyone else around that will listen to join the membership.
Well,
So
thank you so much. And I think that's a great, as our partnership here with this program with KLA conference. I did notice a lot more school librarians, it seems like, at the past year in Wichita. So just anything I can do to support people who maybe don't normally put themselves out there to present, it is very much appreciated. We want to hear what you have to say. And I will say thank you to you, Tonya, for agreeing, even though you maybe weren't super comfortable, to this guy reaching out to you saying, I want to put you on Zoom for 30 minutes. So thank you for doing this with me and with our participants. We really appreciate the work you're doing in Topeka with those students in your community. So we've come
thank
to the end of our time. Uh, Thank you everybody for joining us on this snow day. I hope you'll tune in on our future months. So stay safe out there and stay warm if you can. I'm looking forward to 50s next week.
thank you.
Thank you. Bye bye, everybody.
Bye.